Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 29 of 30 days of real estate educational content. And it's a very great honor and privilege to have had you join me so far over the last 28 days. Today is day 29, and it promises to be a great time. I've shared so much content on Nigerian real estate. And in this rounding up days now, the second to the last day, I want to continue with some pitfalls you should avoid in certain aspects of real estate. Pitfalls you should avoid. Today, I'm going to be talking about pitfalls you should avoid in relation to yearly residential rentals. When I spoke about it some weeks ago, I said yearly residential rentals refer or are one of the most known forms of real estate in Nigeria. Yes, it is the most known form because 80% of Nigerians live in residential apartments, yearly residential apartment. So the ones 1, 2 bedroom, block of flats, 3 bedroom, duplexes, and you pay yearly rent. That's where many Nigerians stay because Nigeria has a 28 million housing deficit. So not every Nigerian can afford a house, so they simply stay in yearly residential rental apartment. They simply stay there. So what I'm going to be doing today is to share some pitfalls you should avoid if you're going into the business. The first pitfall you should avoid is poor tenant selection. Yes, everything starts from there. Poor tenant selection. If you don't get it right in selecting the people who will stay in your property, you would have missed it from the beginning. And I'm assuming here I'm talking to landlords. So poor tenant selection is a pitfall. It's a mistake which you should avoid. And what do I describe poor tenant selection to me? You bring in tenants who do not have stable income. It's never a struggle to pay the first year rent because you will not even have access into the property without paying your first year rent. But when you have poor tenant selection, you pick tenants that do not have stable income, they have bad rental history. Where they were before, they were evicted by court process, and they have questionable character. If you put in your apartment tenants that have poor rental history, you'll be setting up yourself for serious headache. And the outcome of such is that such tenants will default on rent, they will damage property, they will do so many terrible things to your property which are disadvantageous to you. So how do you forestall this? How do you prevent poor tenant selection? You want to do a thorough background check. A thorough background check is very important. When you're interviewing them or screening them, you want to know what their yearly salary is. You can even go as far as asking for bank statement. A property I manage here in Abuja, I did that. I requested for bank statement just to know inflow and outflow, to have an idea of whether the person will be able to pay the rent in the property because the property is quite pricey. So you want to know that. You want to know why they are leaving their former place. Were they evicted? Ask these questions in the screening process. Were they evicted? You want to know that. You want to know their monthly salary. Ideally, a tenant whose 3 to 4 month salary cannot pay their rent is not ideal for your property because they will struggle. And you do not have the right to evict a tenant legally by your own self. Only the court can do that. So if you select tenants poorly, it will affect your business of yearly residential rental. It will affect you badly, and you want as much as possible not to fall into that trap. So you do background checks in order to prevent this. Screen your tenant very well. And the second pitfall you should avoid is ignoring legal restrictions, ignoring legal obligations. As a landlord, legally there are rules and regulations that regulate your relationship with your tenant. And as they say, ignorance of the law is not a defense. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. So when you are unaware of such legal regulations, you put yourself at a disadvantageous point. So for instance, you're not aware that you cannot evict your tenant without a valid quit notice. You just wake up one morning and you tell your tenants to leave. You do not do quit notice. Or if you even do a quit notice, you do not use the appropriate time. Yesterday, somebody reached out to me that I should help him contact a lawyer in Lagos who can help to plead with the landlord for an extension of time. That our rent expires by, I think, April. And in November was when the landlord gave them the quit notice, November or December. Well, since he did not ask for my advice, I just told him, okay, I will get you a lawyer. But do you know that is already a defective quit notice? For a yearly rental, the minimum time needed for a quit notice to be valid is 6 months. And if this man knows that the matter goes to court, that will be an invalid quit notice and they will win the matter. So as a landlord, you need to be aware, even though you may not be a lawyer, just be aware of some legal regulations and the like. So not knowing these things can be disadvantageous. You're unaware of the legal expectations and you go and illegally evict a tenant. You remove their roof or you padlock their apartment, or you hire hoodlums to come and throw out their property. The law frowns against self-help and is punishable under the law. It's punishable under the law. You're not aware that the law frowns against collecting rent in advance over a minimum period of time. Yes, in Nigeria, many times we pay rent in advance 1 year, but you are collecting 3, 4, 5 years in advance. And you are not aware, for instance, if you are in Lagos, that it's a crime that is punishable with 3 months imprisonment or an option of 100,000 naira fine. So you see, your lack of knowledge of the legal regulatory requirements for real estate in a yearly residential rental can be disadvantageous to you, and it could bring you serious problem. So what is the solution? Know the law. Even if you're a landlord, have a lawyer who advises you on your relationship with your tenants, so you do not default, so you do not breach the law. The third pitfall you should avoid is having a poor maintenance culture. Oh, how sad. And it's very common here in Nigeria or here in Abuja. The ones I've experienced, poor maintenance culture. Landlords that just want to get their yearly rental, but they do not budget, they do not remove something to maintain the property, to keep it in a good state. They delay on repairs. Things go bad, especially things that are within their purview of operation, things that are within their own scope of work. Because you know there are some duties that are to be borne by the tenant, but some are to be borne by the landlord. External repairs. And this leads to tenant dissatisfaction. See the tenant complaining, grumbling. Tenant having a very bad stay there. You see, even when the tenant leaves, it leads to sometimes high vacancy rate. Ideally, yearly rental should go fast. So when one tenant is moving, when one tenant is moving out, another one is moving in. But because of your poor maintenance, some prospective tenants will be repulsed. They won't be encouraged to come to your place. So it's very wrong. So what do you do as a solution to avoid this pitfall? As a landlord, make it a duty to budget annually for property repairs. Yes. Whether it's a 10%, a 20%, don't just take the whole rental amount. Make it a duty to keep a portion for keeping the property in a good and tenantable state. And also respond quickly to issues that come up in the property. Yes, I manage 2 properties in Dawaki here in Abuja, and the landlord is somebody I admire so much. I even had to tell him. I said, sir, I admire you. Have managed up to 3 other different properties, 4 actually, with 2 different landlords. He's the 3rd landlord. And I said, of all of them, you are the one that responds the most. An issue comes up, I report to him that same day. The next day, is solving it. So there was an issue, there was a plumbing issue in the apartment. Water was soaking into the wall. I reported to him the same day. Even though he was not in the country, He reached out, he got a plumber, and within 2 days it was attended to. Always prompt in attending to issues. Always prompt in attending to issues. That's why the property is in a good state. That's why it can command high value. But you as a landlord, if you do not make that a point of responsibility to respond quickly to tenant issues, it's very wrong. It will be bringing about tenant dissatisfaction. So that's one pitfall you want to avoid, which is a poor maintenance culture. Another pitfall you should avoid, which this time is not from me but from the point of the tenant, which if you are not aware of can lead to so much loss, is tenant abuse of the property. Yes, you're a good landlord, you maintain your property well, you've done a good check, but something still happens and you just miss it along the way and you get a bad tenant. It could be a pitfall. One of my bosses in real estate was telling me about some tenants he got. They altered the property without his approval. Imagine within the property, building, putting blocks to have new demarcation within the already built up property. So we have some terrible tenants who alter the structure without consent from the landlord. Very terrible. Who damage facilities, damage the water sink, damage tiles. Bad tenant attitude, like subletting the property without the consent of the landlord. The property was leased to you, but you are now releasing it to others, using it for short, like without the consent of the landlord. This is reflective of tenant abuse of the property, and it's a pitfall that affects you as the landlord. So what can you do to avoid this pitfall? One, make it a duty, especially to inspect the property regularly. It could be once a month, once in 2 months, once in 3 months. Make it a duty to inspect the property regularly, so that you are having a first-hand view of what is happening in the property. And number 2, which is the last, is have watertight clauses in your tenancy agreement that prevent altering of structures without consent, that prevent subleasing of the property to another person without consent. It's very important you have that, so that if the tenant goes against that, there could be consequences for that. So in conclusion, these are some of the pitfalls you should avoid as a yearly residential property landlord. 1, poor tenant selection. 2, ignoring legal restrictions due to ignorance of the law. 3, poor maintenance culture. And 4, tenant abuse of property. I've stated them what they mean, I've stated the outcomes, and I've stated the solutions. So please work with them. Remember, as you're doing an investment in residential property, you're doing it for business, you're doing it to get profit. You're doing it so that you do not get rental, the value of your property appreciate, so that if any day you want to leave the business, you have the opportunity to sell it at a profit. So be aware of these pitfalls and don't give in to them. Don't let them capture your business so you can make progress. And I'm sure as you do it, you're going to have a great business as a landlord in yearly residential rentals. My name remains John Olisa, and I'm the CEO of Red Diamond Properties Limited. And one of the major things we do is property development. Our estate in Kuchiako Extension, Kuji, is up for sale, serviced plots. With 200 square meters going for 1.5 million, you can get a 3-bedroom terrace duplex. With 300 square meters going for 2.2 million, you can build a 4-bedroom semi-detached duplex. While with 400 square meters going for 3 million, you can build a 5-bedroom fully detached duplex. And the last but not the least is a 1,000 square meter land going for 7 million, and in which you can build a block of flats, 2 units each of 1 to 3 bedroom flats. That is 6 units. So you can contact me for more information on +234 813 799 0792. +234 813 799 0792. You can send us an email at reddiamondproperties10@gmail.com. reddiamondproperties10 gmail.com. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better you are to succeed in the area of knowledge you have. So I'm giving you practical knowledge on real estate in Nigeria, and I believe that you utilize it, you will succeed. So thank you so very much for joining me today in the 29 of 30 days of real estate content. You can get the video here right here on Facebook, or I'm going to also put it on my YouTube page, John Olisa. Watch it, like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Thank you for joining me in today live broadcast. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, which is the last day, the grand finale of 30 days of real estate content. And I look forward to seeing you. Thank you so very much for joining me. Have a good night. Bye-bye. Good night.